In every society, it is found that men and women are aware of the rights and duties of the husband and wife much before they enter into any relations, and these rights and duties form a part and parcel of the whole marriage complex in any society. They are not uniform in all societies. In some, they are quite complex, but in any case, rights and duties of the husband, wife and children are of a binding nature and are recognized by the society. Marriages are usually arranged within social units according to customs and traditions, and for this societies at all times in history have formulated rules for marriage. Marriage rules are norms that regulate the choosing of spouses as well as relationships between married couples and their various kin. What is marriage? Marriage, also called matrimony or wedlock, is a social union or legal contract between people called spouses that establishes rights and obligations between the spouses and their children, and between the spouses and their in-laws. The definition of marriage varies according to different cultures, but it is principally an institution in which interpersonal relationships, usually intimate and sexual, are acknowledged. When defined broadly, marriage is considered a cultural universal. In many cultures, marriage is formalized via a wedding ceremony. In terms of legal recognition, most sovereign states and other jurisdictions limit marriage to opposite sex couples or two persons of opposite gender, child marriages and forced marriages. In modern times, a growing number of countries and other jurisdictions have lifted bans on and have established legal recognition for same-sex marriage, interracial marriage and interfaith marriage. In some cultures, marriage is recommended or compulsory before pursuing any sexual activity. People marry for many reasons, including legal, social, libidinal, emotional, financial, spiritual and religious. Marriages can be performed in a secular civil ceremony or in a religious setting. The act of marriage usually creates normative or legal obligations between the individuals involved. Some cultures allow the dissolution of marriage through divorce or annulment. Polygamous marriages may also occur in spite of national laws. Marriage can be recognized by a state, an organization, a religious authority, a tribal group, a local community, or peers. It is often viewed as a contract. Civil marriage is the legal concept of marriage as a governmental institution, irrespective of religious affiliation, in accordance with marriage laws of the jurisdiction. Forced marriages are illegal in some jurisdictions. Myths and practices. While the institution of marriage predates recorded history, many cultures have legends concerning the origins of marriage. The way in which a marriage is conducted and its rules and ramifications has changed over time, as has the institution itself, depending on the culture or demographic of the time. Various cultures have had their own theories on the origin of marriage. One example may lie in a man's need for assurance as to paternity of his children. He might therefore be willing to pay a bride price or provide for a woman in exchange for exclusive sexual access. Legitimacy is the consequence of this transaction rather than its motivation. In Comanche society, married women work harder, lose sexual freedom, and do not seem to obtain any benefit from marriage. But nubile women are a source of jealousy and strife in the tribe, so they are given little choice other than to get married. In almost all societies, access to women is institutionalized in some way so as to moderate the intensity of this competition. Forms of group marriage, which involve more than one member of each sex, have existed in history. However, these forms of marriages are extremely rare. Of the 250 societies reported by the American anthropologist George P. Murdoch in 1949, only the Cane Gang of Brazil had any group marriages at all. Various marriage practices have existed throughout the world. In some societies, an individual is limited to being in one such couple at a time, monogamy, while other cultures allow a male to have more than one wife, polygamy, or less commonly, a female to have more than one husband, polyandry. Some societies also allow marriage between two males or two females. Societies frequently have other restrictions on marriage based on the age of the participants, pre-existing kinship, and membership in religious or other social groups. Current scenario in marriages. Today's statistics on marriage are a little scary. Current studies show that more than 20% of all marriages end in divorce. People used to get married and stay married. Kids used to have one set of parents their whole life. In today's scenario, many children do not have a loving mom and dad to share the life with. Nobody goes into marriage thinking that it will end in divorce. It's like buying a new car. They all look and smell good when you take your first ride. So what's the problem? People study their profession for years. I am an engineer and I studied for 7 years. Doctors study for 10 or more. It takes a plumber 6 to 10 years. How many years did you study marriage before you decided to walk down the aisle? Could we have maybe hit on the solution? Most people do not know the basic principles God laid out for marriages to be successful. So what is that solution and how do we succeed? These principles are aimed at two totally different sets of people. Those who have never been married, those are married and feel like the honeymoon is definitely over. No society gives absolute freedom to its members to select their partners. Endogamy and exogamy are the two main rules that condition marital choice. Under the rules of endogamy, people are expected to marry those who have certain social characteristics in common with their own. Under the rules of exogamy, people are expected to marry those who are in some way socially dissimilar to them, such as gender. Other marriage rules govern the number of spouses people may have or where couples may live in relation to in-laws. Endogamy. What is endogamy? Endogamy is a rule specifying marriage to a person within one's own group. A rule of endogamy permits a person to marry within his or her own group. The group may be a caste in India, a class, a rule, an ethnic group, or a religious group, or even a village. It prohibits marriage with out-group members. Thus, endogamy is a rule that prescribes marriage between a boy and a girl belonging to the same group. Forms of endogamy. Tribal endogamy. Endogamy that allows a person to marry another one within one's own tribe is called tribal endogamy. Caste endogamy in India. Endogamy that allows a person to marry another person within one's own caste is called caste endogamy. A Brahmin will marry a Brahmin, a Kshatriya will marry a Kshatriya, and so on. The caste groups in India are endogamous. Subcaste endogamy. In India, each caste consists of several subcastes and sub-subcastes. Endogamy occurs at the subcaste and sub-subcaste level. Class endogamy. A form of endogamy which allows marriage between members of a single class in Europe and America. Class endogamy is prevalent. Race endogamy. A form of endogamy which permits marriage between members who belong to the same race. In Africa, Europe, and America, race endogamy is common. Ethnic endogamy. A form of endogamy which allows marriage between members of the same ethnic group. Village endogamy. A form of endogamy which permits marriage between members of the same village community. It exists in South India. Deme endogamy. A form of endogamy which allows marriage between members of close kin group called deme. Demes occur among the Arab Bedouins. Moiety endogamy. A form of endogamy which allows marriage between members of the same moiety. Among the Todas, for example, there are two moieties, the Tartarul and Taiwalial. Each moiety practices endogamy. Origin of endogamy. Why endogamy came into existence? Let us look at the reasons now. Universal fear of strange, the novel, and the unknown is the source of tribal endogamy. Desire to keep up the purity of culture and prestige and status is the source of caste, class, race, and ethnic endogamy. Desire to keep the family property within a circle of close relatives and the continuous political supports in the event of conflict with outsiders are the sources of deme endogamy among the Arabian Bedouins. Let us now look at the advantage of endogamy. Endogamy preserves the group's homogeneity. Endogamy maintains the numerical force of its group. Endogamy preserves a religious or ethnic tradition, usually the endogamous group within which one is encouraged to find one's spouse is relatively large. For example, many people living in Jordan identify themselves as Palestinian rather than Jordanian. They are encouraged to marry other Palestinians, not Jordanians, which helps them to preserve their ethnic identity. Endogamy preserves the purity in the group and protects its prestige and status. For example, the Red Indians feel that they are pure and beautiful. They say that the white people are like skinned rabbits, where the Red Indians and whites formed into a mixed race. The former consider themselves superior to others, thereby bestowing more prestige and status on themselves than on the hybrid. Endogamy keeps women happier. As endogamy promotes selection of spouse from within one's own group, it facilitates circulation of women within the group. In that case, the women can remain within the familiar surroundings and be in the company of women who belongs to their own society. The problem of communication can be avoided. Adequate assistance can be obtained easily from their own relations in any case of emergency or crisis. Endogamy keeps property within the group. The property given to the bride or the groom will be within a close circle of relations across generations. Endogamy fosters a sense of unity within the group to which the couple belongs. We will now look at disadvantages of endogamy. Endogamy restricts the sphere of mate selection. Endogamy encourages ethnocentrism. Endogamy emphasizes group feeling and creates communalism, regionalism, and violence. Endogamy encourages hatred and jealousy among different groups and societies. Endogamy encourages the customs of dowry and bride price. Now, having looked at what is endogamy, its origin, advantages and disadvantages of endogamy, we will now look at the next rule of marriage called exogamy. Exogamy. What is exogamy? The social rule that one must marry someone from outside one's own group is called exogamy. Exogamy is a rule that requires an individual to marry outside of a culturally defined group of which he or she is a member. All societies prohibit marriages between individuals of the same group because they consider that members of the same group are brothers and sisters. For this reason, they stipulate that an individual must seek a wife not from his own group but from another group. This especially there with regard to descent groups. Each descent group is a collectively of people who arose from a common ancestor. Thus, exogamy favors marriage outside one's own group. It is culture which decides the exact limits of one's own group. Forms of exogamy. Village exogamy. It is prevalent in North India. Members of the same village do not intermarry. People of a village consider themselves as brothers and sisters. Therefore, people of one village take bride from another village. For example, in Ranikera, a village in Aligarh district of Uttar Pradesh, 266 married women had come from about 200 different villages averaging between 12 and 24 miles away. 220 local women had gone to 200 other villages to marry. As a result of these exogamous marriages, Ranikera, a village of 150 households, was linked to 400 other nearby villages. Lineage exogamy. Several tribes besides Hindus and Chinese practice lineage exogamy. Members of the same lineage are brothers and sisters, hence avoid marriages. Clan exogamy. There are several tribes which practice clan exogamy. They consider a clan as a kin group whose members are brothers and sisters. The Murya Gonds of Chhattisgarh and the Murgin of Australia, for example, practice clan exogamy. Moiety exogamy. For example, the Korkas of Madhya Pradesh have moieties, namely Raj and Pallari, which are exogamous. Likewise, the Bondos of Orissa have two moieties, namely Ontal, which means cobra, and Kilo, which means tiger, which are exogamous. The Lingit Red Indians in North America have two moieties, the Ravan and the wolf, which are exogamous. Restricted or differentiated exogamy. In this, marriage is forbidden within certain kin, while at the same time it is preferred or required, as the case may be, with other relatives who are not culturally defined as blood relatives. These persons are almost always cross cousins. Simple or undifferentiated exogamy occurs. It exists among the Europeans and the whites in America. Origin of exogamy. Edward Burnett Tylor argued that Paleolithic hunting and gathering bands in all probability exchanged women in order to live at peace with each other. They might have entered into a system of marital exchange between bands. This arrangement was a positive outcome of need for survival. That means early human populations practiced exogamy in order to live at peace with them, and exogamy continued as a custom since those early times. Herbert Hope Risley proposed that probably humans had a desire to have variety in their life. This desire might have influenced human beings to seek marital ties with strangers, unfamiliar and unknown to them. As a result, exogamy had come into existence. Edward Westermarck asserted that children growing in the same village may not have sexual attraction for each other. Familiarity breeds contempt. Such an aversion for the familiar may be responsible for the origin and continuity of exogamy. Emile Durkheim said that primitive belief about blood and life gave rise to incest, taboo, and exogamy. According to him, primitive believed that loss of blood leads to loss of life. Since sexual relations initially involved some loss of blood, early humans had avoided close relatives for sex congress. This resulted in seeking the women for marriage from other groups and the emergence of exogamy. Is religion a reason the marriage has these preset rules? Religion has historically set all kinds of patterns to live by and obey. As a person and an interfaith pastor, I encourage consciousness ideally before marriage, but bringing it in at any time is valuable. What commitment is healthy for you? I do not believe that happiness is a key measure of what to do in life. Of course, happiness is, in a sense, the purpose of everything. But we can learn that happiness does not depend on our external situation. I encourage clear thinking. What acts are a basis for divorce, spouse or child abuse, imprisonment, inability to live one's spiritual practice or life purpose while sharing a life with the other, infidelity? In today's multicultural world, we are informed by religious views, but we are only guided by religion if we choose to be, and we live with the consequences of our actions. What brings the deepest level of unconditional happiness, love, and wisdom? Can you live your life purpose and continue your marriage? These, I think, are more important than conditional happiness. Hindu marriage law. Purpose of exogamy is to prevent incestuous relationships. The persons from the same gotra are believed to have descended from same common ancestor and therefore considered to share the same lineage. The traditional Hindu law on exogamy has been replaced by the Hindu Marriage Act 1955. Section 5 of the Act does not specify the requirement of non-sagotra marriage as a mandatory condition for a marriage to be valid. What does this mean? Simply put, it means that Hindu marriage law considers sagotra marriages as legally valid. This can be better explained by the following example. Suppose a Hindu boy of Bharadwaj Gotra, whose family has been settled in Mumbai for years, wants to marry a girl who is of the same Gotra, that is, Bharadwaj Gotra and whose family has been resident in Gujarat for years, there is no justified reason to consider their marriage invalid under prevailing Hindu marriage law. The rule of exogamy based on Gotra has been discarded and abolished as a measure of social reform. Like any other social institution, marriage is a social contract between two consenting individuals who surrender some freedoms to gain some rights. This contract is largely based on mutual goodwill and trust. The trust that each person places on the other shall not be betrayed. It involves some cherished concepts like love, which in turn involves a lot of self-sacrifice and caring. This institution can be successfully negotiated by a set of individuals who are truly committed to make it succeed. Many spiritual qualities like faith, honesty, openness, love figure in the contract, and it involves a lot of striving to make it work.